everybody. Welcome to Our Healing Voices podcast, episode 28. Very excited for another round, another hangout, another deep dive conversation with another powerful, unique being, Nicole Quintana-Wolf. And so those of you who are just joining the Our Healing Voices podcast and YouTube channel, welcome. And those of you who are back again, welcome back. And just know that I'm very grateful for your support and pray and hope that these conversations give you insights that are helpful and that and also connect you with people that perhaps could play an important role in your life here in the coming months, years, as you move forward in your body, mind, spirit wellness journey. So if you are brand new, just a little clarity up front is that kind of the intention of this podcast is that, I think it goes back to listening to the Dalai Lama 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago now, in Austin, Texas. And he shared, somebody asked him if we were ever going to experience like nuclear disarmament in this world, so that war would cease and peace and love could be the way. And he was like, if every human were to disarm within, then yeah, for sure, we could definitely have that happen. And that really struck a chord with me because, I think that rings so true, right? What's going on what's going on with our body, mind, spirit, wellness world individually so influences the way we show up with one another and with our local communities and global communities. So, part of the reason this podcast was launched was, I think, this body, mind, spirit, wellness journey that each of us is on. Some of us very intentionally, some of us sometimes intentional, some of us are brand new to the world. I think that evolution work, that shifting from extreme trauma into more peace and more grace and more gentleness is going to be a game changer, not only for us as individuals, but also for the collective. So, and then the piece of like, the reason I'm doing interviews and not just freestyling every episode is there are a lot of people doing incredible work around the world. And sometimes, I don't know if Nicole's felt this or you felt this, but sometimes it can feel like the weight's on your shoulders and like you're the only person out there reading the books or practicing the meditations or whatever, going to the trainings, having the conversations. We think we're like the only ones doing it and the weight of the world is on our shoulders. And reality is there's a lot of people near and far doing this work in unique ways. And so, my goal is to like bring voices forward to remind us all that each of us has a voice and is an important player in this evolution that we're all walking through. So welcome. Thanks for hearing my little intro, everybody. And just grateful to have you all here. And Nicole, wow, I'm stoked that we connected through Instagram. I mean, really, this is the beauty for me of technology today, is the way in which we can connect with people that we vibe with people that we resonate with people that we want to grow with and learn with, And so I'm thankful for Instagram connecting us together here. I think probably in last summer, fall time, I think was when it was. And it's just been fun. Whenever I see stuff that you're sharing through your Instagram world, I'm like, it just reminds me. It reminds me like, okay, dude, okay, keep doing what you're doing, right? It's honestly seeing you doing what you're doing is like, Aaron, keep doing what you're doing. Keep breathing, keep slowing down, keep healing, keep taking care of yourself, So, Nicole works with all sorts of people, but is, I would say, a women's wellness coach, and we'll let her share more details, but women's wellness coach, and also like a healing, like allowing breath to be in a healing modality when shifting traumas and working through past stuff. And so, I'll allow her to share more about that, but I would highly recommend if you don't know Nicole yet, be sure to follow her on Instagram, connect with her, start to see what she's up to. I know she's got some like a Facebook group that she
Mm-hmm.
facilitates. And so just lots of cool things going on. I'm sure we're going to learn more about today. So on that note, first, if you want to add anything, just to kind of what you're up to right now, and then I'll ask the next question.
Yeah, yeah. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be on this podcast.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I'm a former teacher, actually, a former high school English teacher, also. Yeah. And so, right now, I'm doing a breathwork facilitator training to help bring breathwork to people. And I'll go more into that later on. And also working with mostly women one on one and to focus on healing and to focus on growth through healing.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
Love it. Love it. All right. So let's hear more about how you got here, right? How you got to
Yeah.
figure out right now where this is like your passion and what you're pouring your love and your energy into. Um,
Mhm.
as you think back on the last few, the last 15, 20 years, or you can go back as far as you want in your life.
Mhm.
What have been like two or three or one, whatever you want to share,
Mhm.
like what have been like big game changers that have that have shifted the way in which you show up, that have you doing what you're doing right now. So yeah, I'm curious to know like if there's pivotal moments up till now that really have led you to be where you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's kind of a series of events that is coming to mind when you ask this question. For me, that was actually relatively recently. So my journey starts way back, but really when I started to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in high school. I always wanted to be in education. I love working with young people of all ages, really. I found teenagers, like high school, to really be my sweet spot. Um, and so I was so excited to be a teacher. I got my undergrad degree in education, and I was like, all right, I'm going to connect with students and I'm going to have such a great time. My teenage years, they were fine, like they were great. But I had a lot going on internally. I was very emotional and I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. And I was kind of like the epitome of teen angst. And so, and when I was that age, I didn't really have adults in my life not many, who were leading me in that capacity of like personal development and just helping me just kind of navigate transitioning into being an adult. And so the thought of me being able to be that for someone else and be on like a student's journey at that point in their life just made me so excited. Like students were my reason why I became a teacher, as I think is the case for a lot of teachers. So I, got my degree. I'm like doing my student teaching. I'm ready to go. I did some substitute teaching in London, which was very challenging. Shout out to all substitute teachers. Like that is such an underappreciated job. Um, and then I moved to Chicago and I got a job teaching seniors in Southside Chicago. And I loved it. I loved like working with them and getting to know them. And I found that really quickly I burnt out. Probably within the first semester, I burnt out because I was trying to keep up with everything. And teaching is an incredibly demanding job that I think, unless you've been a teacher or someone personally who is a teacher or has been a teacher, it's kind of hard to understand that because there's this concept of like, you get summers off and you get vacations, which yes, you do. But at least for me and a lot of teachers I know, that time is spent just coming back to just trying to get back to like balance because it's almost like you're working twice as hard during the year. So when that first year, when I burnt out so quickly trying to keep up with everything, I just told myself, like, okay, I've heard this before. The first year, you're just keeping your head above the water. I just need to get through it. I just need to make it. And I did. I made it to the end of the school year. And I was like, next year is going to be so much easier. And then next year happened, and it wasn't that much easier. Um, and this kind of became like a rinse and repeat cycle for the first several years that I was teaching, where in my mind, I had this thing of like, I just need that one more thing. Once I do this year and I have my curriculum down, then I'll be good. And then I switched grades. I moved to New York City and I started teaching in the Bronx. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm teaching freshmen. So it's a new curriculum. So it was always like something I was chasing, trying to find that sense of stability and balance in my life because I was so out of balance. And it was during that time that I was on autopilot, which I think a lot of people, obviously myself included, live most of their life in autopilot of just like, this is what I have to do. I don't have a choice. This just is what it is. And I have to grin and bear it. And it came to a point at the end of 2019. And this is when things really started to shift that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I started going to therapy and highly recommend therapy. Like everyone try therapy at some point in your life. Because having that neutral person who can reflect back to you what's happening in your life is just, it's so eye-opening. And I realized how burnt out I was. And I also realized the ways in which that was affecting the people around me, especially my partner at the time. Like he was just kind of getting the brunt of my stress. Like I was not fun to be around at home specifically. At work, I could kind of turn the switch on and, it really lit me up to be around my students. So that got me through. But then it was like at the end of the day, I just crashed so hard. And so just realizing this isn't sustainable. I do have a choice in this, and I'm choosing to change something. So I started to meditate. This is how I just dipped my toes in. I started meditating every day, just for 10 minutes, like guided meditations in the morning. I started doing yoga. And it was through this process of slowing down and checking in with myself that I really saw like what was going on. What were the things in my day to day that was stressing me out? What were the choices that I was making that was dishonoring my boundaries, or just like didn't even know what that was. Like boundaries, didn't have any boundaries. And it wasn't until I really slowed down and saw like, okay, this is what's happening, that I just kind of opened up to this whole like world of spirituality and the idea of connecting with my heart and my intuition and following the yearnings of my soul, which can only be heard when you slow down and take that time for yourself. So the more that I got into spirituality the summer of 2019, I started to see things in my life that were no longer in alignment. And it was very difficult to see. And one of those things was my relationship. And I had been with this person for almost 5 years, amazing man. And it just wasn't in alignment, like there was no other, that's like the only explanation that it could be. Mm-hmm. And so that was really big. That was like part of this really big shift that was happening, was that came to a close. And so 2020 started. I was like, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm feeling so much better teaching wise because I had tapped into different tools and resources that I could use to get me, not just get me through work, right? Like I wasn't in survival mode anymore. I was actually like, okay, I'm good. Like I can handle this. And I was feeling so good. Like I was like, I figured out like how to be a teacher and how to balance everything. And then 2020 happened for all of us. And a week, so this was in March, I moved in with a friend. And this was the first time I had lived with anyone other than myself or a partner since I was in college. And that was a big transition for me. And it was challenging. And I think it was the 6th day after I moved in, my cat, who was 8 years old, Phoebe, she fell out of the window and like from the 6th floor. And she was in like ICU for a week, and before eventually making the decision, like, okay, like she's ready to transition to the next realm. And then a week later was Friday the 13th. And that was like the last day that New York was open, and then everything shut down. And it was like in a matter of, this all unfolded so quick. In a matter of like a couple of weeks, it was like, okay, I'm no longer in a relationship. I'm no longer in my home that I have been living in for 2 years. I'm living with someone new. My cat just died. She was like my baby. It was so, and now the world is closed. Like it was so, just talk about like the rug getting ripped out from under you. Yeah. I was just so disoriented, as I think many of us were as the pandemic started. And kind of like the cherry on top of all of that is, while I was navigating this, and I'm so grateful that I was working with a coach at the time, because I had so much hesitation about working with a coach. I'm like, that's a lot of money. That seems like some kind of weird gimmick. Like, no.
Mhm.
Um, and then I finally was like, okay, fuck it. I'm just going to do it. And it was like the best thing that I ever did for myself. And so thank God I was working with her, and she helped me navigate like all of these challenges to find the gratitude in these situations, like find, I feel like silver lining is, I don't know, that can be kind of dismissive of what you're experiencing. It wasn't that I was looking for the silver lining per se, but I was like, this is happening for me. Like, what are the lessons that I can take from all of these really challenging experiences to help me grow and be a better person? And so as I'm like delving into this and really connecting with myself, finding more about what it means to really listen to my intuition, it came through like intuitively that I needed to quit my job. I needed to leave teaching. And usually, when people make these really big life decisions to leave your very secure 9 to 5 and start your own business, or, go into like the entrepreneurial space, you have a plan and you have money saved and you have like an idea. And I was just out here like freestyling, like, all right, this is what my intuition is telling me to do. I'm just going to jump in, because I have found that when I don't listen to my intuition, I get overwhelming anxiety. And it was like my body was telling me, like, this is not in alignment for you anymore. So that was really challenging also. So in a period of, I don't know, I think it was like 3 or 4 months, it was like a blowtorch to my whole life as I knew it. And it was just, it left me in this like smoking rubble, but really good, right? Because it's like when a wildfire happens, all of that new space that you just cleared out, like the soil is rich with nutrients and ready to grow. So it just left me in that place of openness of like, okay, I've all of this space has been created in my life, some by choice, some not by choice. What's going to happen now? And this is when I was just like, really just following the flow of what felt in alignment and just taking things day by day. And just kind of slowly my business blossomed. And I first started working just with educators to help them feel more balanced. And this is like putting tools in their toolbox, learning about boundaries, learning about like healing modalities that you can do, doing a lot of mindset work. And that ended up expanding to working with women in general. I found that I was attracting more than just educators. And so I've shifted into working with women. And as this all was happening, I found breath work. And this was really big for me because I love meditating. I think that meditating can be very challenging for a lot of people, myself included, because our minds are nonstop. They're constantly going. And to get into a space where you can relax your mind to the point that you are just in your body and you can hear like the whispers of your soul. I don't know how else to describe it. That's really what it feels like to me. Um, that's just so challenging to get there. And so breath work is a way that really accelerates that process. So you can go from like thinking, busy to calm, centered, aligned with yourself. And then you just have more clarity for like what needs to be done or what is good for you in your life and what the next moves that you get to make are. So that's my journey. And now I'm here just riding the wave. I'm on this breathwork facilitator course right now. And I'm in the process now where we are facilitating sessions. Like I've gone through all the training and now it's like the practicum part. And I'm just finding like working with so many different people and doing this and just seeing similar results over and over again, that breath work has the ability to create a profound sense of healing and to also just help you connect with yourself. So at the end, if you're open to this, I would love to lead you and your listeners through just a really short little breath work and to just notice any shifts that could happen.
Yes, please. Yes, please. That sounds
Okay,
amazing.
awesome.
That sounds amazing. Wow, so good. Okay. Um, yeah, just okay, beautiful sharing. So I mean, you took us to high school angst. I would imagine a lot of us can relate to just that the journey, and then,
Yeah,
but also like feeling toolless, right? Like you
yeah, it's a big one.
shared a lot about tools.
Mhm.
You've been offering a lot of like helping teachers find the tools, like the
Mhm.
modalities that can support them to find greater balance, to find more breath, to not feel like um, they're on autopilot all the
Yeah.
time and whatnot. So, yeah, so from that experience that you had this passion, like, all right, I'm going to go teach. You were loving it. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, initially that first year or two, and I can definitely empathize with the first
Mm-hmm.
year or two where you're just like, wait, hold on a second. Are the kids running this room? Or I thought I was the teacher, but
Yeah.
these kids have another plan, I think. I remember sometimes just sitting on the floor in the front when I was severely overwhelmed. I would just like
Mm-hmm.
sit and just wait for the kids to realize that I was like doing yoga in the front.
Yes.
And then they would be like, I think Mr. Because they liked me. They,
Yeah.
I'm sure you had the same.
Yeah.
They liked me, but they just
Mm-hmm.
like didn't necessarily respect me all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
like when they saw me, they were like, okay, guys, shh, let's
Yes.
let Mr. Lehman have the floor for a little bit, So
Yeah.
anyway, just so I can empathize with the whole
Mm-hmm.
that beginning stages. I'm sure any teachers who listen will be like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've even like toyed, you talked about this, like, moving into the entrepreneurial space. I've even toyed sometimes over the last 6 years of entrepreneurship of like going back to the classroom. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always thinking about that first two years that you
Yeah.
have to get through. Like you have to like almost like
Yes.
get through
Yeah.
for then the school kids, like the kids in that school, to see you and respect you. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have like rapport, and then you have a shot, or is how it
Right.
felt, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, then you kind of felt, so it sounds like the beginning of 2020, you were like, okay, you had been in therapy for a year-ish,
Mm-hmm.
started to listen to your intuition more, um, felt led to leave a partnership and move, kind of start a fresh solo,
Mm-hmm.
and just were having maybe better boundaries for yourself as you were teaching.
Yeah.
And then it was like, but then like you said, the blowtorch, holy moly.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
That's intense. I'm sure so many listeners can relate to the intensity of what that was for them in their own unique ways, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
but it sounds like the way you're seeing it is, okay, it's continuing to lead you into what your soul actually
Mm-hmm.
really wants to create and wants to put, what you want to put your energy into.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like we have so much resistance to the unknown. It's
Mm-hmm.
scary to not know. It's scary to make big decisions or to leave what you are comfortable with and what feels safe to you on like a gut feeling.
Mm.
That's terrifying. So to really like follow that and trust that, and to manage my emotions, because what you were saying about like those first couple of years of teaching, when it's like, who's in charge here, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would look at things like that. And there are so many elements of education, like public school education in America, that for me, I'm like, this gets to change. Which, we can go into that if you want, but I think like a huge part of that is that, like the students and the way that the curriculum is set up is that they're not taught, and we weren't taught if you went to public school in this country, like we're not taught about emotional management. We're not taught what to do when there are crises happening in your life, when your cat dies and you break up with your boyfriend, and, like all of these things, like we're just out here and everyone's just doing the best that they can. And I really think that if there was like, like things in the curriculum that integrated more like personal wellness, and giving students like the tools and the modalities to help them connect with themselves and to manage emotions, that there could just be such a collective shift that happens. So I just had
Agreed.
to throw that part in there.
Agreed. Right. Agreed. Yeah. I'm, I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I know you talked to my buddy Adam recently,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm always like, dude, when are we going to have this like online school that focuses on lifestyle,
Yes.
focuses on like, all right, here's how you're going to actually enjoy your life
Oh my
and
God.
not be a robot. Cause I mean,
Yes.
really that's what I felt like I was training my kids to do,
Exactly.
especially in my math classroom. I
Mm-hmm.
had way more flexibility in my leadership. I did like leadership and
Right.
communications, but But
That's
the
cool.
math class, I was like, I'm freaking training robots. This is not
Yeah,
okay. I was like, this is not
exactly.
okay. So,
Yeah. And
so
this is what, like, it's like once I came back to balance, like that school year of 2019, 2020, I felt teaching wise, I felt really good. Before we went virtual, that was obviously like a roller coaster, but
mhm.
that year of feeling like, okay, I've unlocked the key of like of how I can be, and my attention, because I was more balanced and centered, I was able to focus on kind of like noticing more things that were happening around me in the classroom. And I became really disillusioned with teaching because, like you said, like the robot thing, like I felt like that too. And even looking at, the required content for teaching, when is the last time that you used Pythagorean theorem as an adult? Like, I'm sorry, I don't fully agree with like forcing certain parts of the curriculum. And this especially was just thrown in my face when my students would ask me, like, Miss, when do we need to know the difference between a simile and metaphor? Like, when are we gonna use this in real life? That was constantly a question that they were asking. And I didn't have a good answer for that. I'm like, you're probably never going to use this unless you go into this field. And so that was like a big thing for me too, is like, I can't justify why we're doing this. I can't justify why we're spending time on test prep and focusing on numbers and data. And that stuff is important. Don't get me wrong. Like it's very important, but there's such an overemphasis, in my opinion, on those kinds of things. And even just the way the schedule is set up, where it's like, okay, you go and there's a bell that rings and you better be in your seat when the bell rings or you're late. And if you have a certain number of tardies, then you get a detention, or right, like different schools do it differently.
Yeah.
You have a shorter amount of time for lunch. And a lot of schools, especially in city schools, which is where I have primarily worked, there's no outdoor space because you're in the city. So you are indoors all day. And especially in the winter, like going into work when it's dark, leaving when it's dark, that is not good for your mental health. Like we are meant to be outside at least some points in the day. And it just, like looking around at that, I'm like, what job in the real world operates like this? This is like designed for like factory workers. We are operating on a model of education that is so antiquated.
Mhm.
And the reason that it hasn't changed is because no one is really questioning it to a big degree. Like there are definitely, there's a lot of advocates for educational reform and totally stand with that. But just really taking a step back and looking at all of this. And also, when it comes to grades is another one that I have a real issue with, assigning a number value
Mhm.
to work that is being done, or, you're on this certain track, or what college did you get into? What were your SAT scores? It's like we are inherently teaching kids from such a young age that your worth is dependent on something external. And that is just not true. And like a combination of all of these factors, I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm going to come back with some change. And like I love teaching, so I want to come back teaching wellness and teaching things that are actually going to help people be the fullest expression of themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Such a, yeah, real talk. And, yeah, here's to the change. I know there's people out there like we know you and I were both, we were like, all right, how can we do it differently?
Mm-hmm.
I was showing way more YouTube videos than I probably should have been, like,
But
because
yeah,
I was like, this is mindset. Math, like, if you don't have a good mindset,
yeah,
you're going to fail exam after exam, so
definitely.
I was just literally working on mindset probably
I
70% of
love
class
that.
because I was like, these kids just had a mental block
Yeah.
on like, if they missed one, they're
Yes.
throwing the towel on the rest.
Yes.
Like, all right, that's a mindset thing.
Yep.
Let's
And
adjust,
that's
let's address
totally
that.
learned, right?
Yeah.
Like that's part of the school system in a lot of ways, is like, yeah, you either got it right or wrong. Like there's very little room for error.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also, on that note, just want to add to, like, there are so many amazing educators and they are carrying the school system on their back. And there are so many parts of the education system that work and that are amazing and that are
Yeah.
helping kids and educators.
Totally.
So I wanted to put
But,
that out there too. But
for sure. For
yeah,
sure. But
there needs to
yeah,
be
and
some big change.
I think all educators would hear you and what you're sharing and just say like, yeah, we have
Mhm.
the thrive this I heard you sharing like, how do we teach kids to thrive in life, right?
Yes.
Like and I know educators would be down. They're like, yeah, we do. We have to figure out how to do that more in our classrooms, in our
Mm-hmm.
schools,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to move forward. I heard a quick interview recently, and I was trying to find the full interview. I don't know if it was just this brief. Tony Robbins and
Mm-hmm.
Prince, I don't know, Prince E,
Oh,
um, was telling Tony, he's like, what are we, what are we doing with schools right now, especially as technology over this next, we don't know where we're headed the next
mm-hmm.
15, 20, 30 years, but it's just going to exponentially become more centered in most people's opinion.
Yeah.
So he's like, he said, what about emotion? Yeah, like you're sharing. You're like
Mm-hmm.
emotional support for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
How to deal with these emotions that come up.
Mm-hmm.
How to, yeah, like you said, like when a breakup happens, what the are you supposed to
Yeah.
do? It's
Yeah.
like, how do you walk through that? Therapy, like
Right.
how many people think that therapy, they look down like, no, you don't
Yep.
want to go to therapy. I think it's getting better. I think
Yeah.
more and more people, I think the coaching world, you said
Mm-hmm.
you had to say, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm
A
doing
lot of
it. I
stigma
need
I
it.
had to break through.
Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
there's resistance.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, yeah, I appreciate all your sharing there. Um, so say a little bit about so as you've done some training and teaching with like working with teachers,
Mm-hmm.
what's that been like? What have been some things you focused on as you've been working with educators and helping them like find their way and find greater health and like more
Mm-hmm.
balance, more boundaries? Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I first started working with educators or just really bringing like mindfulness to educators when I was still teaching. My principal, the school that I was at in the Bronx, really amazing school. And the entire leadership team was so open to like mindfulness and emotional, mental wellness. And so the principal would invite me to lead meditations for the whole staff, which was really cool. And I found that through doing that and through connecting with people individually, that the stories were so similar, which is just like, I'm so tired. I have no energy for this. I'm frustrated. Like there are so many things being passed down from admin, and it's not even coming like from the principal. It's coming from above the principal, right? Like it's just like the trickle down of like, why are we doing this? Like we really don't have a say in a lot of aspects of education, but yet we're the ones that know our students the best. We spend every day with them. And just overall, this sense of just like being drained,
Mhm.
just, like your cup is empty, you don't have much to give. Um, and I think a lot of people too, like something I've noticed is almost this element of feeling trapped, where it's like, well, I've been here for X amount of years and I'm not sure how it is in California, but like in New York City and in Chicago as well, like if you're part of the union, like how much you're going to be making in a certain amount, like everything is very laid out. You have great benefits. And so it's like, well, I'm just kind of stuck here. And this is just how it is. It's like this very passive acceptance um, of instead of looking at what can be changed, of just this surrender in a way that feels like giving up, not necessarily surrender in a way of like, I surrender to the outcome because I can't control that. It's like surrender of like, I guess I have no power and I have no choice in this.
Yeah.
And just helping, like boundaries was such a big one. And I keep mentioning that because when it comes to extra, can you fill out this spreadsheet? Or even kids, this is where I really had a tough time with boundaries is, on my lunch period, a kid coming in and being like, can I talk to you? Or just wanting to hang out or whatever. And it was hard for me to say no. And then if I didn't say no, and then eighth period rolled around and the bell rings and I got one bite of my sandwich in and I'm like, oh God, now I have to teach this class and I don't feel centered. Like that, I think is a very prevalent thing. So talking a lot about boundaries and just getting like anxiety and overwhelm levels down. Like this, I was working with educators as the pandemic was first started, when in New York City we went virtual pretty much overnight. It was very jarring. No one really knew what was going on, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, you're going to be teaching from home. Like good luck figuring that out, everyone. And a lot of kids, especially like in the area that I worked, they didn't have access to Wi-Fi, or they didn't have laptops at home that they like, where it's like each child could have a laptop.
Mhm.
And so figuring out that element as well was really straining on educators, because of course, like, we care about our students. And when you know, like, your student doesn't have access to this, or they're not resourced in this way, and there's really nothing that you can do to help them because we're all trapped up in our homes, like, it was such an emotional toll on a lot of teachers that I connected with as well.
Mhm.
um, and so just kind of like talking through that, like talking through a lot of that, and the mindfulness piece was really important, of just being more intentional with when you're ending your workday, being more intentional with what you're doing during your planning period. um, and so this was a really big one that I implemented for myself, that I saw such a shift. And it's something that's so small, and
Mhm.
it's like the big change comes from like the small changes that we stay consistent with. And for me, that was on my planning period every day, instead of diving into whatever work I was trying to rush through, so I didn't have as much to do at home,
Right.
I would take 10, sometimes 15 minutes, which in a 45-minute planning period, I'm sure, like 15 minutes, that's a long time. It feels like a long time. I would take that time to make my oatmeal, I'd make my cup of tea, and I would sit in my desk chair and just quietly eat with like the lights off. Sometimes I would do breathing, or I would meditate. And having that, as well as the awareness of how I was feeling throughout the day, and then helping, like, pointing that out to other people. Because when we go on autopilot, and when we have like a job that needs to be done, and especially with teaching where you have so many tasks that need to be completed, it's easy to go into like, okay, boom, did that, what's next? Boom, did that, what's next? And you're just like running on this wheel.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we don't always check in with ourselves. So having points throughout the day where you check in, you take a moment and like, okay, how am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? And sometimes that meant for me during class saying to my co-teacher, I'm going to run to the bathroom, going to the bathroom and just doing a forward fold in the bathroom, and just like clasping my arms and being like, okay, it's all good. I'm breathing. I'm here. And then even just like that 30-second moment with myself gave me a little bit more, so that when I went back into the classroom, I felt better. I could show up in more integrity. And so sharing like the things that worked for me with other educators was really helpful, I think.
Mhm. Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Such important things.
Mhm.
You were walking through yourself, and really cool that your admin was like having you lead meditation. Um,
Yeah,
so important. I think in every workplace, right? I mean, there should be some sort
definitely.
of. I mean, as far as mental health goes, there is a crisis in our world, in
Mhm.
our country, in our world.
Yeah.
It's seems to only be expanding. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, the tools that you're offering, I think, are just so key. When you're sharing about boundaries, I know just
Mhm.
personally in my own life journey, like that boundary journey is tough. It's
Mhm.
tough. I'm an Enneagram too. What are boundaries?
Yeah.
I'm sure teachers that listen, they're like, boundaries? Who does
Yeah.
that? Yeah, who does that?
Yeah.
So continuing to have those conversations, not
Mhm.
always comfortable, but so key
Yeah.
to be like, and when you said the whole like having to tell a student, hey, yeah, I'm going to have my lunch by myself because I
Mhm.
actually need 45 minutes to myself or 35 minutes,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I'm sure so many folks who, whether they're teachers or in other workplaces, I think yeah, what might you offer just if somebody's listening, maybe they're not in the teaching world, but are just struggling with
Mhm.
their breath during their work week, where it's
Mhm.
like they feel like they're on that, like what might be too, like they feel like they're on a conveyor belt or they're on like running on the hamster wheel. What might be two things that you would just offer
Mhm.
um, to reconnect? Like
Yeah.
you shared some already, but if you'd
Yeah, I
offer,
love that
yeah.
question. Yeah, so I think the first one would definitely be making time, and I say making time, like setting aside some time, even if that's a few minutes every day, for you to just check in with yourself. And that can be like writing in a journal really quickly, checking in with a friend of like how you're feeling, taking a few deep breaths, doing something that is like movement where you're moving your body, and getting out of your head. And as a side note to that, feeling like, because this is something that I said all of the time when I was teaching, is that, well, I don't have time. You're telling me that I should be doing all of these things. I don't have time for that. You don't understand my life clearly. And I think this is especially true, if you have kids or whatever, like, and I get that. And I honor that like time can be crunched. And so this is where this would be the second thing, is kind of like some mindset shifting around this, is where you get to be your number one advocate. You get to say, okay, well, if I, seemingly don't have time in the day, then I'm going to make time, because nothing could be more important than my well-being. Because if I am not well, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, then I have nothing to give, or I have less to give. And so reframing it in a way of seeing you taking time for yourself is not selfish. It doesn't mean that you don't care about the other people or the other like responsibilities in your life, but it's actually you saying, I'm doing this so that I can show up as a better version of myself for the people in my life. Like if your own well-being is not enough of a reason for you, then look at it as you are actually doing the people in your life a disservice if you show up with an empty cup. And so setting that time aside for yourself, it's better for you and it's better for the people around you. And one more thing I would say to add on to that is to be consistent in whatever it is that you are doing. And consistent just means showing up more often than not. I am a recovering perfectionist all the way. And I'm someone who, and I think this is, like a lot of people can relate to this. I'm all in or I'm all out. I have my, at one point, I like had like a daily tracker, and I, ticked off all the boxes of the things I was doing, and it wasn't intentional. It wasn't mindful. I was ticking off the boxes. And then if I missed a day, I'm like, well, it's over. I'm done. I failed. And now I'm just going to go to the other end of the spectrum and just like completely lose all of my practices. And so to just be really gentle, like give yourself grace. You're doing the best you can, and that's enough. And just make that time for yourself.
Love it. Love it.
I think that was way more than two, but
no, but that's beautiful. I receive those. I know other folks will definitely receive those. I mean, it is a rewiring, right? It's a rewiring, because I think so many of us
definitely
heard like, or just selfish, like taking care of ourselves. Like for some reason, I think so many of us got that message. We got that message. We saw people kind of running on the hamster wheel, and most of our models were robotic. So how do we shift that, right? And I love what you're offering folks, where it's like coming back, making time, like it's actually critical, and I love that piece of if it feels selfish, it's like, no, you really are doing it for the people around you, the people that care about you. I love that. That's so huge. So good. So good. All right. So for you, what do you currently, as you've shifted into this entrepreneurial journey, I'd love to hear about that. Cause, if you don't mind, cause I know a lot of folks have the idea of like, okay, I'm teaching math, don't actually like it. How do I go into something else? How do I do something I actually want to do? What's it been like for you? If you're open to being vulnerable on that front, because I know some folks would love to like, real talk, and also like the mindset work that I know you've been doing big mindset work to really go after it. So anyway.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster in a lot of ways. It's scary to be in a place where you don't have the security of like a paycheck coming in every period of time.
Right.
And you don't have the security of like other elements that come with having like a 9 to 5. And so that, like, doing a lot of mindset work around money was huge for me. Realizing like in a lot of ways, money does, I don't want to say money does not equate to safety at all, but it plays a factor in us feeling safe, because in the world we live in, we do need money to, have food and have a shelter and all of these things. And so doing a lot of mindset work around that, and a big part of it too is just trusting. Like for me, like learning to really trust this is what came through. I'm going to follow my intuition and I'm going to let go of the how. That has been the hardest thing for me because I'll think like, okay, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to, have make a certain amount of money, or how am I going to attract people? So blah, blah, blah. Like I get caught up in the how, and we don't need to know how. Like you just trust, you declare like, this is what it's going to be. This is my intention. I'm surrendering to the outcome because I don't have control over that. This is my intention. This is my declaration. I'm open to where this is going to take me, and I'm letting go of the how. And when you let go of the how, you allow space for things to just beautifully unfold in ways that you could never have imagined in the first place. And so this has really deepened my spiritual practice, because when it comes to things that make us feel unsafe, things that call our sense of security into question, what happens is your nervous system kicks in. And, you could look at, I don't know, let's say, I'm trying to think of something, like there are so many challenges that come with being an entrepreneur, like maybe looking at a project that you're going to do and wondering like, I need to get this done by a certain time. I'm never going to be able to get this done. How am I going to get this done? And your mind goes into a frenzy, and your body, so your mind is like threat. There's a threat happening. We are not safe. If we don't figure this out, it's not going to be okay. Right. And like your body is just taking the cues of what's happening. And so your body enters a state as if there is a murderer knocking on your door trying to get in. Like we kick into the fight or flight mode. And when you're in that space, you can't, you can create, but it's not going to be as authentic. It's not going to be like as pure or like as you, because you're operating from a place of fear as opposed to operating from a place of like security and a place of love. So that has been really big for me in deepening my spiritual practice of the mindset piece of like, okay, I'm here. It's all good. Like nothing is actually threatening my safety right now. And then the physical aspect of bringing my body back to a state of homeostasis, because when you're in that fight or flight, we have this idea that like, and this goes along with anxiety. If you experience anxiety, that, oh, well, I can't control that, right? Like I'm really nervous. My heart is beating really fast. I'm getting really anxious. Mm-hmm. And you actually can control that through your breath. So that was such a powerful thing for me, to tap into that and to find the ways in which I could calm both my mind and my body to be relaxed so that I could actually be in flow and I could actually connect with myself and be like, okay, from a place of clarity, what's my next move? From a place of clarity, what do I need to do? Or who do I need to be? And so that like this, for me, the entrepreneurial journey has been unfolding in tandem with my spiritual journey. And I really don't think that I could be like where I am if I hadn't have leaned into the spiritual aspect of things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I feel all of that. That's beautiful. And, yeah, just real talk. That's real talk that it really, I think sometimes it like, I know for me as being an entrepreneur, it's like, it seems so, oh, it's so good. And it's like, but reality is, we all have moments where we're like, maybe that 9 to 5 would be nice.
Yes.
Maybe that guarantee every 2 weeks would be nice. That's a part of the entrepreneurial expansion, and doing something scary that's uncomfortable. We're not raised with that mindset of I love those. I mean, I'm taking those in as I'm thinking about podcast expansion and other business expansion and retreat expansion. It's like, I know that vibration, right? The vibration when you're showing up with love and when you're showing up with anxiety, and and everybody knows it too. People are like, oh, dude's anxious. Dude's like, or, oh, they're calm. That feels, they're calm. I do want to work with them. Oh, that sounds exciting, so.
Vibes don't lie.
Yeah. Right. It's so real. So real. Great offerings for those people who are considering it, entrepreneurship, or maybe are launching something on the side right now.
Yeah.
Those are great reminders, how to reconnect with, you said breath. I mean, the breath piece,
Mhm.
I'm really excited for you to guide us here shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in a little bit of a, just some breath work, because I mean, I find myself like just being out in nature, that's
Oh,
like
big time.
my constant, like, wow, this is such a gift, right?
Mhm.
I think from now on, whenever I hear the train, yesterday I heard it while I was in here, and I'm like, I need to come up with some practice that when I hear the train, like I was like,
Yeah. I
I want
love
to like
that.
have a practice when the train goes, that like I say a prayer, or I say a mantra, or, like
Mhm.
take 3 breaths or something. So
Yes, I love the intentionality behind that because I think something like that, like the train in the background, or even little things, you drop a plate and it breaks, you spill a glass of water, like these little moments that can be, if we're not paying attention, just kind of like, oh, or like we just block it out. And I've tried to reframe that. So anytime something like that happens, or I like this happened the other day, I stumbled when I was walking
yeah,
and I was like, okay, this is a call to the present. What am I thinking right now? How am I feeling? Like, what's going on?
I I've historically bonked my head, and
Really?
I don't use the word bonk very often, but I literally, my dad, and every time I like hit it on, like, I'm tall, I'm 6'2",
Hmm.
so I hit a lot of different like door frames, not a lot, mainly in Italy I hit door frames,
Oh,
but
I bet.
yeah, but here, yeah, just like the back end of a car or something, and I'm
Hmm.
like, why do I just want to always have a scratch here? But yeah, what good reminders to like, all right, you're not in your body, you're in your
Hmm.
brain.
Yeah.
Why don't we just hit him in the head because he's in his brain,
Right.
back into his body?
Yeah. And to
Right.
look at like what were you thinking about when that happened? I've caught myself in thought patterns when that like where you don't even realize you're in the pattern, you're cycling through it and something happens. Yeah, you bonk your head
Right.
and it's like, oh, what was I thinking about? Like
Yeah.
get curious.
Yeah. Quick. Well, one question, just as you said therapy earlier,
Yeah.
and because I was raised by 2 counselors, and
Oh,
so my parents were quite present as far as listening goes,
yeah.
and providing that counseling energy. But um, I had never gone to therapy. And I
Hmm.
had a little bit of arrogance. I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I need therapy." But then
Right.
the relationship challenges that Sarah and I were feeling, it was like, "You're going to therapy.
Yeah.
Y'all need to go to therapy. You need to go. She needs, like."
Hmm.
Um, so many good takeaways over the last couple of years for us and for me
Hmm.
individually. I'm curious if there's like one takeaway, just because I think therapy. I would love for that. Like, if those of you who are listening today, or whenever you're listening, you know, find a therapist that works for you, like that
Yes.
you vibe with, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what's been a takeaway, that like a huge takeaway? I mean, you're giving
Hmm.
so many great like boundaries and breath and moving your body, like doing the forward fold, going to the bathroom, doing the forward fold, and being like, okay, yeah, I'm good. But
Hmm.
yeah, what's been like a huge therapy takeaway?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest like overall takeaway from therapy is that things are not always what they seem. We get really caught up in this is the way it is, and this person is being that way, and I'm being this way, and I'm not wrong. Or like we have certain beliefs, a lot of limiting beliefs, and a lot of conditioning that just happens, depending on what our parents are like, what we've been exposed to growing up. And we can have this really stagnant way of viewing things. And so going to therapy, I found to be so helpful because it just kind of broke down some of the things that I believed to be diehard truths were not actually truths. And a lot of that for me had to do with, like you mentioned about your parents being counselors and that, you had that space where they listened and were, tuned in a different way than I think a lot of parents in our generation were, which is totally okay. And that's just not how it was in my family growing up. And I am very different from my family in a lot of ways. And I think one of the main ways is that I am very emotional. And so growing up, if something would happen, I would be like, well, that hurt my feelings, or like I'm getting angry about something, whatever. And they're like, yo, chill. Like, what's your problem? Like, why are you so sensitive? Like, grow tougher skin. And so I learned over time that my emotions were not valid, that they were just like unwarranted, and that maybe even something was wrong with me and that I should not be vocalizing these things. So I would sweep my emotions under the rug.
Mm.
And then it got to the point with the combination of like burnout of teaching and all of this just like pent up, unprocessed trauma from my life that I had completely ignored came to a head. And that was when I got to work through that in therapy and realize like, oh, wait, when this happened or that happened, the way that I felt was valid, and it does deserve to be examined, and it does deserve to be honored because those emotions were there to teach me something. So yeah, the main thing from therapy is just realizing that your perspective is not the only perspective. It is not the way or the truth. Like it can just be opening and expanding to new realities.
Mm. Yes. I mean, that would, if I hadn't already gone to a therapist the last couple of years, that would be like, yep, signing up. I need to sign up. Because again, I mean, we all those childhood things
Mm-hmm.
are real
Yes.
and very rarely. And I had counselor parents, but I still didn't process shit that I went through as much as
Yeah.
I could have.
Right.
That then had me stuck,
Yeah, definitely.
in some really unhealthy ways, unhealthy patterns,
Yeah.
so
And I think on that note too, like you mentioned that there were unprocessed things.
yeah.
When we think of things that need to be processed, because this was my mindset before I went into therapy. I was like, I don't have any trauma. Like nothing happened to me. Like I had a totally fine life. And I just want to distinguish between, this was something I saw, the holistic psychologist, I think is her. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
of the things that she said that really stuck with me, and this had to have been a couple of years ago, she posted this, that everyone experiences trauma, but there's different types of trauma. So there's trauma with a big T, which is things that we would maybe more classically consider to be traumatic experiences, like really intense, like abuse or neglect or, things like that. And then there's trauma with a little T. And trauma with a little T is like your mom forgot to pick you up or was late picking you up from school one day. And now you have fear of abandonment issues. And it's like, we all have trauma with a little T. Like things happen to us when we are children that as an adult might not seem traumatic, but when you're a kid and you don't have the full understanding of things, you take that straight into your subconscious and you believe that to be true. My mom must not love me, or my mom must not care about me because she was late, right? Like we form these beliefs and then we just operate from them our whole lives. And so going to therapy and processing, even if you don't have trauma with a big T, and if you don't like the word trauma, because I had a lot of resistance to that word when I first started doing a lot of inner work, then just know that you just have things that get to be aired out and that get to be let go.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. So just in honoring your time, I want to shift to maybe a final question and then
Mm-hmm.
have you after that kind of, if you're open to it, yeah, do a little breath work with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so excited for that.
Okay, cool. So yeah, final question would be,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so grateful for you being here today and taking time and sharing your voice. Just what you've walked through. I know lots of folks who are listening are gonna just like be like, yes, 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 I need, yes, oh, whoa, yes, please. And well, first off, like, so to connect with you,
Mm-hmm.
what would be like the best path for somebody? Because I'll put that in the YouTube and everything, but if people would just hear that, if they're listening on podcast or on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
what-
So definitely my Instagram. So
Okay.
at wellness with _ Miss Wolf.
Okay.
And I've also recently forayed onto TikTok. So I made a TikTok last year and I have intuitively felt recently that I get to show up more authentically on social media. So I'm doing 30 days of TikTok. I'm just seeing what comes out. I'm
Yeah.
not worrying about what anyone's thinking. So if want like I guess it's all unfiltered, but like the extra unfiltered, uncurated version, head over to my TikTok.
Yeah.
And it's the same handle at Wellness with Miss Wolf.
Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'll make sure I have all those links available to listeners. And yeah, anyway, so grateful for your voice. So if, let's say, well, I see a lot of good things coming. I see a lot of good things coming for you, Nicole. And So I'm imagining you in a room full, auditorium full of 10, 20,000 people. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, maybe it's teachers, maybe it's
Mhm.
women, maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's at some cool wellness event over in somewhere in Europe, and they've flown
Yeah.
you over and they're like, hey, we want you to be a keynote because you're rocking it and you're helping so many people. Just learn these skills and tools, breath work, boundaries. What? Yeah. So you're finishing up your speech. What do you leave? What are you leaving folks with? What are there like a couple pieces that you really want to
Mm.
emphasize um, as people are leaving from that room? Like they've loved it, they've been taking notes, and you're like, all right, here's a couple pieces that you got to walk away with.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that question. I think it would have to be along the lines of a form of encouragement in saying that find what works for you, right? Like we all have our own unique journeys. And, for me, breathwork has been transformative. For someone else, breathwork might not do it. Like find the tools that work for you. At the end of the day, you want to feel in alignment with yourself. Like that is the biggest thing. So whatever you need to do to get you there, whether that's dancing like a fool every morning or, going for a swim in the ocean every evening, whatever it is, dancing under the full moon naked. Find your thing and just stick with it. And don't let anyone tell you that you're weird or that that's not okay or it's not socially acceptable. Do what you want to do as long as you're not causing harm to anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
If it makes you feel good and if it lights you up. And I really think that by collectively, and this is going back to the quote that you shared at the beginning, which I loved, by the way, about, kind of like the internal shift is what's going to create the external shift.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. That's how we do it is that people get in alignment with their own truths. And that causes like a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
So just doing what lights you up.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, cool. So yeah, breath work. We'll just shift into that. I'll mute
Yeah.
myself over here and allow you to lead us in some breath work.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
All right. So just to give some context with breath work, we're going to do a really short, like a little mini one. And so we're going to do 90 seconds of what's called the triactive breath. So this is a 3-part breath where this is all through your mouth. You breathe into your stomach, into your chest, and then you exhale out your mouth. So it sounds like this. We're going to do that for 90 seconds. And we're going to hold. We're going to hold for a couple seconds at the end of that. And so you might find in those first seconds of holding your breath that your mind goes into disarray. Like there's some chaos that happens where it's like, oh my God, you're holding your breath. Like what's happening? We don't like this. We're not used to this. And I invite you to observe that, notice that. If you ride it for like 2 seconds, there comes this like sense of, okay, it's all good. We're here. We're safe. So looking for that experience, like with the next couple of minutes. So, all right. And if at any time you feel like you don't want to do it, you don't like it, don't do it. Okay. You're totally in control here. So let's start by just dropping in. So you're welcome to close your eyes if that feels good for you. And just really arriving in your body in this moment, noticing any physical sensations that are happening in your body. Feeling the seat below you, feeling supported. And just noticing how does your mind feel on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most, just quietly observing to yourself, how busy is your mind right now? And know that any number is perfect and where it should be right now. We're not trying to change or fix, we're just observing. And starting to tune in with your breath. So just noticing what your breath is like right now. Are your inhales deep and into your belly, or are they more short and shallow, higher up in your chest? You might find that just by bringing an awareness to your breath, that it starts to deepen. Okay, and we're going to take 3 deep cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, and then we'll start with the breath pattern. So deep breath in through your nose, feel your belly expand. And exhaling out your open mouth. Deep breath in, belly expands. And exhaling out your mouth. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay, and when you're ready, starting with the breath pattern. Beautiful. Keep breathing. I invite you to find a rhythm and a pace that feels good for you. You're welcome to take deeper breaths and slow it down if that feels better. Beautiful. Keep going. Let your body do the work here. Noticing if there's any resistance coming up. You're doing great. Just a couple more seconds. Okay, stick with it. Last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And release the breath pattern. Take a deep breath in and hold at the top. Okay, so we're holding here, noticing what's going on in your body. Sticking with it. See if you can feel your heart beating, the blood rushing through your veins, and what it feels like to be alive in this moment. And when you're ready, let it go. And I invite you to just sit in this space for a moment. Notice how you feel. Notice any shifts that occurred. And gently in your own time, when you're ready, coming back to the space around you, bringing in any movement that feels good and gently opening your eyes.
Wow.
How was that for you?
Oh my, that's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I loved your, I loved your like the intro, kind of
Mm-hmm.
setting the vibe, and
Yeah.
the intro had me like, as my eyes closed, I was seeing like literally just stars just hanging out, like floating
Oh,
around.
that's beautiful.
It was freaking, it was magical. And then I had this song that I was listening to before we started the interview. It's an amazing song by a band called Bird Talker, and
Oh, I
it's
haven't
like,
heard of them.
and it's the song called Want, and it's just, oh, it's so beautiful. It's this meditative. So that popped into my mind, and then holy moly, that breath work, that's wild. I was feeling like energetically, I mean, this is activated.
Yeah, your heart.
So
Yeah.
activated right now. It's
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh.
Love that. Yeah, and this, that was like such a small taste of a full breath work session. Like imagine breathing like that for an extended period of time. You experience like your physical body undergoes a change. Your blood alkalizes, like there are different parts of your brain light up. Like it's really special. And I just want to invite you and any of your listeners. So for the next month or so, I'm going to be offering free breathwork sessions. And
Okay.
that's like a one-on-one session that I curate for you, the music, like your intention, all of it. This is part of my training that I'm doing. So if
Awesome.
you want to join that, like head over to my Instagram and you can sign up for a free session while they last.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mhm.
Wow. That was freaking cool. That was cool.
Yay.
So thankful that you were willing to offer that up at the
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks for being open to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So great. Again, yeah. So to close, Nicole Quintana-Wolf, thank you so much for bringing your voice here, your heart. Yeah, I think for me, like, again, so many great takeaways. I think the one takeaway that, is really jumping up is like the align. It's what you shared in that last piece, that alignment. What
Mhm.
aligns with you, right? What
Yeah.
lights you up? I mean, I think that's just such a beautiful reminder for all of us
Mhm.
as we live our days, and I pray that the evolution that, each of us chooses really invites that daily conversation. I think that's a
Mhm.
beautiful daily conversation for all of us to have. Um, yeah, I don't need to
Absolutely.
offer any more. That's just like, I think thank you for offering that. Yeah, just such a good reminder. And those of you who listened on podcast or on YouTube, grateful to one, be healing alongside all of you.
Yes.
I think it's important work. I mean, if the Dalai Lama's talking about it,
Hmm.
I think it's a good thing that we're all talking about it and we're saying yes to it, because as we get lighter, as we feel the ground beneath our feet more often,
Hmm.
I just know that our connections are going to be more vibrant. Our connection with ourself is going to be more vibrant. Our connections with others is
Yes.
going to be more vibrant. So here's to that. And yeah, just grateful for all the healing everybody's choosing. So
Yes. And thank
yeah,
you so much for having me. This was so delightful. And I really appreciate you giving me this space and you having this podcast and really elevating healing and elevating everyone's different journeys. And anyone who's listening, thank you so much for being here and for taking this time.
love it. Love it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole. This is episode 28 of Our Healing Voices. Look forward to seeing you at the next podcast interview.